Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. For anyone that's new here, my name's OwenAlec, and on this channel I do everything drum related. That includes drum covers, tutorials, gear reviews, tips and advice, just like this video. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then please do consider subscribing, hit the like button, all that good stuff, because it really helps the channel. Thank you very much. So today in this video, I'm going to be giving you 5 tips for your first time as a session drummer in a studio. So I've been a session player now for around about 4 or 5 years, and not only have I done stuff in the studio, I've also done stuff live, both local and also abroad. And there's definitely some things that you guys should know before you jump into the world of session work. So tip number 1 is to know what you're getting yourself into. Now, I don't mean that this is going to be like the worst experience that you're ever going to have. What I mean is on a more individual basis. So when a band or an artist comes to you, you can get all the information out of them straight away and know whether or not this is a job that you want to take on. This will include things like the genre of the music, the number of tracks that you've got to do, how much time you have before the studio session, and also during the studio session. This is a really big one because if you've got like a week to learn an entire album, that's going to be really, really difficult, and you may have to sort of pass that up if this is your first time. But equally, if you're going into a studio and you've got half a day to track an entire album, again, it's just not enough time, and you need to be realistic. Also, in the beginning, it's not unreasonable to talk about payments or covering costs and things like that. As this might be your first time doing any session work, more than likely you would do something like this for free just to kind of get your foot in the door. That being said, you don't always want to do things for free, and you might be offered a gig that's actually going to be paying. It's always good to get these details ironed out beforehand. That way there's complete transparency between both parties. It also saves a lot of discrepancies and awkwardness later down the line. Now, personally, I am terrible when it comes to asking for payments. I just really, really hate doing that side of things, but it is necessary if you want to then get paid for your work. And it's only right that you should, because you are spending a lot of time, effort and money on honing your skills and building your craft, and then you're turning that into a career. And this is exactly the same thing that applies to musicians when they're gigging and getting paid by venues or promoters. Exposure does not pay the bills. Now, tip number 2 is a fairly obvious one, but you've got to know the parts inside and out and be able to play them to a really high standard, or at least get it to the best of your ability. If you've kind of played it through several times and you're kind of thinking, you know what, it sounds okay, but I can do better, keep pushing yourself. Really absolutely nail these parts. However, one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of bands is that they want you to play their songs note for note the way it was originally written. A lot of the times you kind of get told there's a bit of scope, bit of artistic license to kind of play around with the songs and make it your own, but more often than not, they'll just want you to play it exact as it is written in a demo, or if they've got a particular just phone recording or something like that of someone else playing the drums, they'll want it like that. So it's always best to learn these songs exactly note for note the way that it's written, but then maybe have some ideas to one side just on the off chance that in the studio they kind of go, maybe just change that fill around a little bit, and you've got something there in your arsenal straight away to offer them. This is all about being flexible, especially when in the studio, but that's something I'm going to touch on later in the video. It's always good to keep in contact with the band or artist that you're working with. Let them know about your progress or any kind of hiccups that you're having. I'm not saying that you need to message them every single day or anything like that, but if there's a few weeks kind of leading up to the studio session, it's good to just keep in contact maybe once a week or something and just let them know where you're up to and let them know that you are working on this, that you are putting the time and effort in. They will greatly appreciate that. So tip number 3 is to check, double check, and then triple check your gear. So this comes in a few different parts. But first off, you need to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you need to take. It might be worth getting in touch with the studio that you're going to and asking what they've got supplied, what you can use of their stuff, what you need to bring of your own. Because you don't want to get to a session and you've only brought your breakables, but they were thinking that you're going to bring your entire kit. That's not going to look professional on your part, and they probably won't ask you back. Also, super important, you need to make sure that all of your stuff is working, because if your head goes through, or your snare wires break, or a stick breaks and you haven't got anything to replace them with, anything like that, if something goes in a session, that could be the end of the session. The band still has to pay for it, and you're potentially not going to get paid because it's your fault. You need to be looking after your gear. With that being said, I pretty much bring backups to every single session that I do. A backup snare, I'll bring some extra cymbals just in case. I always bring huge amounts of sticks, probably more than I need to, but the last thing I want to be doing is breaking sticks left, right and center and run out. So maybe a few days or a week or something before you go to this session, it's good to change out your heads if you're using the snare, or if you're taking a full kit, change out the top heads on all of your drums. That way they're going to sound the best that they can. And if you do it, say a week before the session, you're going to give them time to settle in so that they're not going out of tune every 2 seconds. Because certainly if you're recording an entire album with a band, you're going to want your drums to sound consistent throughout the whole process, so that it makes it easier for post-production mixing. Tip number 4 is to know where you're going. It's kind of pointless you're putting all this time and effort into learning all the songs and getting really hyped up and all that worry of, like, you know, stress getting everything sorted for the session if you're going to get lost. It sounds silly, but a lot of the smaller studios, the more independent studios, aren't so obvious to find. They're in a mill somewhere and they're kind of down a back alley or something, and you've got to carry all your gear up a flight of stairs. You need to know what you're getting yourself into for that side of it as well. So as I said earlier, research the studio beforehand. If you can try and find the place on Google Maps and that street view so that you can see what the studio looks like, or if you know anyone else that's been to the studio before, either the band themselves or one of your friends or someone else in the industry, if they've been to this studio before, it's good to ask them, because they might say, oh, actually no, it's not the entrance there, it's just round the back and you've got to go through a side door and then up a weird set of stairs or something like that. And it's always good to not get lost. Leading on from that, it's always prudent to turn up early. I've said this before in videos that if you turn up on time for a session or a gig or rehearsal or whatever it is, that's late. You need to be turning up early so that there's any issues like getting there, you know, traveling, that kind of thing. That extra time, that buffer that you've allowed there could be the difference between you getting a call back and not. So tip number 5 is to be flexible and chill. When you go into a studio, things don't always go to plan, and it's not always the way you envisioned it. So you've got to be able to adapt and change what it is that you're doing to suit the situation. Most of the time, it might be something like you using the studio's drum shells. So they might not have the same dimensions that you're used to or the same configuration, that kind of thing. So being able to move things around to suit you a little bit is good, but then you might not be able to suit it too much. So you've got to be able to adapt. Also, you've got to be open and flexible to new ideas. Like I said earlier, you might get into the studio and you've learned the parts note for note and you can absolutely knock it out of the park. But then a spark of inspiration comes to the band or artist and they want you to try something just off the cuff. Having something that you've practiced earlier kind of, you know, in your arsenal is obviously going to give you an advantage, but it might not be what they're after. They might actually have something themselves, an idea that they want you to perform. So it's your job to translate that. But don't worry if you can't get it straight away or you're not quite hearing what they're hearing and it takes you a second or two to get into it. Really trying and really trying to break it down and working with the artist will be so appreciated. Also, in a situation like this, keeping your cool and keeping your head is a really, really valuable asset that you can have. Because if you start getting into a bit of a sweat and you're kind of going off on one, you're losing your cool, then it sets them off as well then, and then it becomes a really unproductive session and everyone starts getting stressful and it's not enjoyable then. I promise you, just keeping your cool and being nice and chill and calm throughout the whole process will not go unnoticed, and it's one of the biggest things that will get you a call back. And as a bonus, I'll give you a number 6. Enjoy yourself and be a good hang. This is obviously leading off from number 5, but if you're having a good time, you're nailing the parts, you're having a laugh with the rest of the band or the artist, and you're contributing to a really productive session, you will be asked back and you'll even be recommended for more work. Speaking from experience, not just from a session player's perspective, but also from an artist who's brought in session players, and I've also recorded session players as a producer as well. I can deal with someone who's not the best player in the world, someone who's not quite getting it right sometimes, you know, you're working with them, that's fine, as long as you're a nice person. If you're absolutely nailing everything, but you're a bit of an ass, I don't want to work with you again. There are loads of people out there that can nail the parts, that are really nice people to work with, and those are the type of people that will always, always get work. Because at the end of the day, we all love music and we all want to make this our living. So why not enjoy it? When you go to a session, just have fun. As long as you're able to get down the parts that you want to and you're not mucking around and just wasting everybody's time, as long as you can get what you're there to do done, you might as well just have fun. Just have a laugh, enjoy the experience, and I guarantee you will be asked back. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys have got something out of it. Let me know if you're a session player or you're a budding session player in the comment sections below. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.